The sky above Nova Europa burned red. No one on the colony world ever imagined war would reach them. Their fields of blue wheat rolled under twin suns, their cities filled with laughing children, their towers glittered like silver glass. Peace was all they knew. But peace is fragile when you're human in a galaxy that harbors ancient grudges. The enemy came in sleek black ships without warning. The first bombs cracked the earth open, destroying schools and marketplaces where people thought they were safe. Within an hour, half the cities on Nova Europa were reduced to smoke and rubble. General Zara Voss watched it unfold from a bunker beneath New Paris, clenching her fists so tightly her nails drew blood. On the holographic screen above her, feeds from other colonies flickered: Sigma Prime, Hion Reach, even Enoch's Cradle, all burning, all under attack. Humanity's outer worlds were falling one by one, and the enemy didn't even make demands. They wanted extermination. "Where are the Titans?" asked Lieutenant Wren, fresh from the academy and not yet accustomed to real war. His voice was small, like a child asking for comfort during a storm. Zara hesitated. Part of her wanted to tell him the truth. The Titans were gone, mere stories parents told their children about ancestors to make them proud. Enormous humans bred for strength, endurance, and rage, so large that normal soldiers barely reached. Their waste, created when Earth first realized it wasn't at the top of the food chain, but Zara wasn't in the mood for fairy tales or comforting lies. "They're coming," she said. "They always come when things get bad enough." Wren swallowed, not fully believing but nodding anyway, hope flickering in his tired eyes. The floor shook as another bomb hit nearby. Dust rained from the ceiling and the lights flickered. Zara grabbed her rifle from the wall and motioned to the others. "Move!" she ordered. "We hold Sector 9 until evacuation shuttles get the civilians out. I don't care if it's the end of the world. You hold the line." Soldiers scrambled, loading weapons, checking armor, slamming magazines into rifles, with shaking hands. They all looked like ghosts, pale and hollow-eyed under the harsh lights. Zara strapped on her helmet, hiding her fear beneath layers of steel and discipline. They filed out into the streets, into the hell Nova Europa had become. It was worse outside. Bodies littered the ground. Smoke clogged the air so thickly they could barely see the burnt-out shells of what had once been homes and schools. The sky, once a gentle violet, was now black and roiling with ash. Zara pushed forward through the rubble, shouting orders, firing at any movement that wasn't human. Drones zipped past, scanning and firing stun pulses to pin down survivors. Alien. Soldiers in chitinous armor moved like insects, cold and precise. Wren was hit first. A burst of energy slammed into his chest, knocking him off his feet. He gasped, trying to rise, blood leaking from his mouth. Zara dragged him behind cover, cursing. He wasn't dead yet, but she knew he wouldn't survive without a medic. "Titans," he whispered again before losing consciousness. Zara's throat tightened. For a moment she wanted to scream, to howl at the sky for help, for backup, for anything. And then the ground began to shake, not from bombs but from footsteps. Heavy, thunderous, earth-cracking footsteps. Zara froze. So did everyone else. So, enemy. The drones. Even the smoke seemed to hesitate. From the dust and ruin beyond the cratered buildings, massive figures appeared. Human figures, but not like any normal humans. Towering nearly 20 feet tall, their armor gleamed dark and dented from countless battles. Massive rifles hung casually over their shoulders like toys. Their faces were scarred, brutal, determined. The Titans had come. One of them, a woman with a shaved head and a long plasma scar running down her arm, stomped into view. She carried a hammer as tall as a normal man, crackling with raw energy. Her voice boomed over the battlefield, loud and furious. "You! Hit our worlds!" she roared. Now you face our wrath! With a deafening battle cry, the Titans charged. They hit the enemy lines like a tidal wave of metal and fury. The alien soldiers, who had moved so methodically before, scattered like ants under a boot. The Titan woman swung her hammer, and the blast knocked a dozen of the chitinous invaders into the air like rag dolls. Another Titan, a massive man with shoulders wide as tanks, ripped a drone from the sky with one hand and crushed it into sparking debris. Zara stared, stunned. She'd heard the old stories. Who hadn't? Tales of the Titan Project, when Earth's last hope against a conquering alien empire was to create warriors too big, too strong, and too stubborn to be stopped. But she'd always thought they were ancient history, old propaganda to make people feel proud. She never dreamed they were real. "Move!" someone shouted into her calm, dragging her back to reality. Zara shook herself and grabbed Ren under the arms, hauling him toward the fallback point. Around her, soldiers rallied. You could feel the fear draining from them, replaced by something wild and fierce, hope. Gunfire rattled and flashed all around. The enemy tried to regroup, but the Titans tore through their formations effortlessly. One of them scooped up a broken armored vehicle and hurled it across a whole street, smashing a command unit barking orders from the rear. Zara ducked behind the shattered remains of a fountain, laying Ren down carefully. He was unconscious, but breathing. Good enough for now. She turned back to the fight, heart pounding. The Titan woman, people were already calling her Forge over the comms, strode right into the teeth of the enemy advance. Plasma blasts hit her armor, and barely scorched it. A squad of alien commandos charged, thinking they could bring her down with sheer numbers. They didn't last 3 seconds. The hammer came down once, twice, 3 times, and each strike sent shock waves that cracked pavement and sent bodies flying. "Holy shit," Zara muttered. "Get the civilians out," Forge roared over the battlefield, somehow speaking into every soldier's comlink at once. "We'll cover you." Zara didn't need to be told twice. She barked orders, and her squad snapped into motion, moving wounded and civilians toward the last shuttle pad. As she ran, she kept stealing glances back at the Titans. They weren't just fighting, they were enjoying it, smashing, laughing, roaring battle cries that shook the very air. It was like they had been waiting years for a fight like this, like they lived for it. And for the first time since the bombing started, Zara felt something burn inside her chest. Not fear, not grief, pride. Earth wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. The evacuation site was chaos. Shuttles lifted off as fast as they could load, smoke clogging the air, civilians screaming and crying. Zara and her team shoved through the crowd, waving their rifles, clearing paths. "Get them out!" she yelled. "Go! Go!" A mother clutching 2 small children stumbled toward her, sobbing. Zara grabbed the kids, helping shove them into the open door of a shuttle. The pilot, barely old enough to drive, was pale but steady as he helped them in. Suddenly, a sharp, piercing shriek ripped through the noise. Zara spun just in time to see a new kind of enemy dropping from the sky. Black-armored, sleeker, faster. Elite units, the real killers. "Incoming!" she shouted, diving behind the shuttle for cover. The elites landed hard, plasma rifles already firing. One shuttle went up in a ball of fire immediately. Screams filled the air. Soldiers scrambled to return fire, but the elites moved with terrifying precision, weaving through the chaos like ghosts. Zara squeezed the trigger until her rifle overheated, but it wasn't enough. There were too many, too fast. And then another Titan landed, not walked, landed. A shadow fell over Zara, and she looked up to see him falling like a meteor, crashing into the ground with a thunderous boom that split the earth. He rose, towering over the battlefield, eyes glowing behind his battered helmet. This one was different from the others, older, meaner. His armor was a patchwork of old battles, scars of wars fought and survived. "You think you can wipe us out?" he growled. "You think you can bomb our children and walk away?" He pulled a massive twin-barreled gun from his back, aiming it at the elites. "Now you deal with me." He pulled the trigger. The gun's roar was deafening. It didn't fire bullets. It fired destruction. Twin blasts of energy ripped through the air, punching holes through the elite soldiers as if they were paper. Whole clusters simply ceased to exist, vaporized where they stood. Zara ducked her head instinctively, feeling the heat of the blasts even from behind cover. Dust and debris blasted outward, knocking civilians off their feet. But the Titan didn't let up. He moved forward step by step, each stride a declaration of war, mowing down the enemy with terrifying precision. The elites tried to regroup, scattering, trying to flank him. A few even got behind him, unloading plasma rifles into his back. But his armor, thick, ugly, scarred, barely flinched. He twisted around, grabbed one elite in his huge fist and crushed him like a tin can. The others bolted, retreating toward the smoking remains of their dropships. Zara didn't waste the moment. "Move!" she screamed, waving the last groups of civilians toward the loading bays. "Get them off this rock!" Soldiers ran with them, pushing wounded comrades onto the ramps, dragging unconscious children by the arms if they had to. There was no time to be gentle anymore. In the chaos, the Titan glanced down at her just for a second. Zara felt the weight of that look. It wasn't pity or concern. It was silent acknowledgement, a nod between warriors. She nodded back. Another explosion rocked the spaceport. One of the enemy warships was descending, trying to cut off the evacuation. Its guns spun up, targeting the shuttles. Zara's heart froze. Not now, not after everything. The ship's cannons started to glow. But then, the ground itself screamed. A second Titan, this one even bigger, wearing armor covered in crude hand-painted kill marks, leaped onto the ship like a beast. He landed on top of it with a deafening crash, his boots punching through the hull. The ship tilted dangerously, engines sputtering. The Titan didn't hesitate. He ripped open a panel on the ship's back, grabbed a massive fuel line, and tore it free. The ship tried to climb higher, to shake him off, but it was already too late. Flames shot from its belly. It spun wildly, belching fire, then slammed into a hillside outside the city with a fireball that lit up the entire sky. The Titans didn't just fight, didn't just survive. They dominated. Zara almost forgot to breathe. She had seen heroes before. Tough soldiers, brave captains, good men and women giving everything they had. But this was something else. The Titans of old weren't myths. They were flesh and blood, and they were furious. Her comm crackled. "Shuttle Wave 3 clear," someone shouted. "Evac 90% complete," another voice chimed in. Zara slammed her fist against the hull of a nearby shuttle, pure adrenaline flooding her system. "All soldiers fall back to the evacuation point," she barked. "We're getting out of here." The Titans kept fighting as they pulled back, covering the retreat. Forge planted herself between the enemy forces and the shuttle pad, swinging her hammer. In brutal, perfect arcs, sparks and blood sprayed every time it connected. The Titan with the twin-barrel gun, some were calling him Grim now, stood just ahead of her, firing in short, controlled bursts, cutting down anything that tried to flank. As Zara sprinted up the last shuttle ramp, she looked back one last time. What she saw burned into her memory forever. The Titans weren't just defending, they were sending a message to the galaxy. To anyone who thought humanity was weak because they loved peace, because they farmed, because they built schools and raised laughing children. The message was simple. If you come for humanity's children, humanity will send its monsters after you. The shuttle lifted off with a roar, the colony shrinking below them into a burning, broken landscape. Zara slumped into a seat, heart hammering, sweat soaking her armor. She looked out the window one last time. Down below, through the smoke and flame, she could still see them. The Titans, holding the line, standing tall, unbreakable. Ren stirred beside her, groggy and pale. "Titans," he croaked. Zara smiled grimly. Yeah, she whispered. Titans. And for the first time since the bombs fell, she believed they might actually win. The shuttle rattled and groaned as it climbed through the atmosphere, packed with wounded civilians and shell-shocked soldiers. Smoke from Nova Europa still clung to the ship's underside like a second skin. Zara sat near the hatch, clutching her rifle out of habit. Ren was strapped in next to her, pale but stable, an IV drip hooked to his arm. His fingers twitched restlessly, like he was still dreaming about the battle. Across the cabin, murmurs rose as people tried to make sense of what they'd seen. They were real, someone kept saying. I saw one rip a tank in half with his bare hands. They saved us. Zara tuned it out. Her mind was stuck on what she had witnessed. Those Titans weren't just soldiers. They were something else, something humanity had hidden away, maybe even from itself. The shuttle pilot's voice crackled through the overhead speakers. Attention passengers, we're making a jump to Earth orbital. Base, expected arrival in 30 minutes. Hold tight. Earth, home. But Zara didn't feel relief. If the war had reached the colonies, Earth wouldn't be far behind. She leaned her head back against the cold steel wall, closing her eyes. She needed answers, and somehow she knew exactly where to start. By the time they docked at Earth orbital base, the wounded were being rushed out by teams of frantic medics. Zara shoved her way through the crowd, waving her rank like a weapon. She needed to get to command immediately. Inside the towering station, it was chaos. Holographic battle maps showed entire sectors under siege. Officers barked orders, civilians packed into holding bays like cattle. At the center of it all, under the flickering lights of the war room, stood Admiral Elin Reed. Reed was a legend. Older than the stars, it seemed, with a silver beard and a back straighter than a steel girder. His eyes, one real, one cybernetic, snapped to Zara the moment she entered. You saw them, he said without preamble. Zara nodded, still catching her breath. The Titans, they're real. Reed's mouth twitched in something that might have been a smile or maybe just a grimace. They were never a myth, he said quietly. We just made people forget. Zara frowned. Why? Reed turned to the battle maps, gesturing for her to follow. Because the Titan Project wasn't something humanity was proud of, he said. It was desperation, pure and simple. When Earth first made contact with galactic civilizations 2 centuries ago, we realized quickly we weren't the apex predators anymore. We needed weapons they wouldn't expect. Not machines, not bombs. Humans. He tapped a display, and ancient, grainy footage lit up the air. Titans in crude armor stomping through alien battlefields, smashing enemies like insects. Enhanced growth, Reed explained. Muscle density beyond anything natural. Reflexes. Regeneration. They were designed for war, and only war. Zara swallowed hard. And when the wars ended? She asked. We buried them, Reed said, his voice rough. Locked them away. Some went into deep cryosleep. Some just disappeared into the wilderness. We promised ourselves humanity would never need monsters again. He turned to face her fully now, his real eye hard, the cybernetic one glowing faintly. But monsters are exactly what we need now. Zara's stomach twisted. She thought about Forge, Grimm, the others. They weren't just weapons, they were people. Broken, angry, abandoned. And they're just fighting for us? She asked, almost not believing it. For now, Reed said. But make no mistake, they remember what we did to them. When this war ends, if it ends, we'll have a new fight on our hands. Zara looked at the battle maps again. Whole systems gone dark, colony world smoking, Earth itself probably only weeks, maybe days from invasion. We cross that bridge later, she said, jaw tightening. Right now, we survive. Reed nodded once, approving. You're assigned to Titan Liaison Command, he said. You leave in 1 hour. Pack light. You'll be fighting side by side with them. Zara blinked. I'm what? You fought alongside them already, Reed said. They trust you. They need a human face, someone who remembers they're not just machines built to kill. He handed her a datapad with coordinates, a mission briefing, and a grim little message flashing at the bottom. Earth Offensive Phase 1. Zara exhaled slowly. The Titans had stepped onto the battlefield. Now humanity was about to unleash them. Properly, not just to defend, but to strike back. And this time, they wouldn't be fighting alone. Zara didn't bother stopping at her assigned quarters. She grabbed a fresh rifle, loaded a sidearm, slung a medkit over her shoulder, and made her way straight to the shuttle bays. The coordinates Admiral Reed had given her led to Hangar 17, deep beneath the main station. Off the maps, off the books. She passed 2 checkpoints, each guarded by soldiers who looked ready to shoot first and ask questions never. By the time she reached the final door, her palms were sweating. A sensor scanned her face and ID. The door slid open with a hiss. The room beyond wasn't a normal hangar. No sleek ships, no gleaming equipment, just a massive, darkened space with shadows moving, like giants in a child's nightmare. And there they were, the Titans. Zara felt her throat tighten as she stepped in. Up close, they were even more terrifying. Their armor wasn't polished or standardized like a normal army's. It was a patchwork of old battle gear, scavenged tech, and personal trophies. Skulls, markings, scratches from battles so old nobody remembered their names. Forge stood near the center, her enormous hammer resting casually against her shoulder. She was laughing, deep and rich, at something another Titan said. A mountain of a man with burn scars climbing up one side of his face. Grim was there too, silent, sitting on a cargo crate reinforced for his weight. He was cleaning his massive twin-barreled gun with steady, methodical movements. His armor was even more battered than Zara remembered. Fresh scorch marks and cracks spiderwebbing across one thigh plate. Standing apart from the rest, watching, everything with cold, sharp eyes, was the oldest Titan, the one who had landed like a meteor at the shuttle pad. They all turned when Zara stepped closer. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Forge grinned. "Well, well," she said, her voice rumbling through the air. "If it isn't the little soldier who stood her ground." Zara forced herself to stand straight, keeping her fear locked inside. "Admiral Reed sent me," she said. "Said you might need a liaison, someone to help coordinate." The scarred man, whom Zara would later learn they called Ravager, snorted loudly. "Coordinate," he said, as if it was the funniest word he'd ever heard. Forge kept grinning, swinging her hammer down to rest against the floor with a loud clang. "You fought?" she said. "You bled? You didn't run? That's enough for me." Grim looked up from his weapon, studied Zara with cold, unreadable eyes, then gave a single, slow nod. The oldest Titan stepped forward, towering over Zara like a mountain come alive. His armor creaked with old weight. His voice, when he spoke, was a low growl. "Name's Sentinel," he said. "I lead this pack. You stay sharp, you stay honest, and you might live through what's coming." Zara nodded stiffly. "What is coming?" she asked. Sentinel glanced back at the others, then turned his gaze to the far wall where a battered hologram flickered into life. It showed the enemy fleet, hundreds of ships, thousands of ground troops, and one massive command vessel at the center, a ship so big it blotted out the stars behind it. "The enemy is making a push for Earth," Sentinel said, "but they won't hit. It's straight. They'll strike the lunar shield array first. Take that down, and Earth's defenses will crumble like paper." Zara stared at the map, heart pounding. "If we lose the moon, we lose everything," Sentinel finished grimly. Forge stepped forward, slamming her hammer's head into the deck for emphasis. "That's why we're not going to let them," she said, fire in her eyes. Zara looked at them, this motley crew of half-forgotten Titans, and felt a strange, fierce hope burning in her chest. They were rough, brutal, half-wild, but they were humanity's best chance. Sentinel turned back to her. "We're moving in 2 hours," he said. "No backup, no cavalry, just us." "And me," Zara said firmly. Sentinel's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile or a warning. "Yeah," he rumbled. "You too, little soldier." The Titans moved into action, prepping their brutal gear, checking their oversized weapons. Zara found herself swept up in their orbit, half terrified, half thrilled. She wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. She was part of something bigger, something ancient and furious, something humanity had buried because it was too dangerous to live with. And now they were setting it loose on the galaxy. 2 hours later, Zara found herself crammed inside a drop shuttle that felt more like a missile with seats. The Titans barely fit. Forge was hunched over, her huge hands gripping the restraints like she might rip them clean out of the wall. Ravager sat cross-legged, his massive rifle resting across his knees. Grim stood, because no way was he folding himself into one of the seats, silently bracing against the hull, and Sentinel just stared straight ahead, helmet in his lap, his old eyes burning like coals. The shuttle rattled as it cut through the blackness of space. Ahead, the lunar shield array hung over the silver surface of the moon, 12 colossal towers linked by glowing energy lines. Right now, those shields kept Earth safe from orbital bombardment. But already Zara could see enemy ships swarming around the array, hammering the defenses with endless barrages. Fighters zipped back and forth like angry hornets. Explosions flared every few seconds. A voice crackled over the comms. "All units, this is command. Array breach in progress. Enemy forces penetrating outer defense lines. Immediate reinforcement requested. Repeat, immediate reinforcement requested." Zara tightened the straps of her harness and checked her rifle one last time. She wasn't going to sit this one out, even if she felt tiny compared to the monsters riding with her. The pilot's voice came over the cabin speakers. "Brace for combat drop in 30 seconds. The Titans barely reacted. They just shifted slightly, like bears waking from a nap. Zara tried to slow her breathing, tried to quiet the voice in her head screaming that she was about to die. Instead, she focused on Sentinel. If he wasn't worried, neither was she. The light above the hatch turned red, then yellow, then green. The doors blew open with a scream of decompression, and the Titans jumped. No fancy landers, no support teams, just them hurtling through vacuum, straight at the lunar array like falling gods. Zara unbuckled herself and sprinted after them, heart hammering. She'd been issued a mag grab pack, ugly, heavy tech strapped to her back that let her steer her fall, barely. She tumbled through the void, Earth rising huge and blue behind her, gunfire lighting up the moon's surface below. She could see the battlefield now. Enemy infantry swarming across the array's control towers, defense turrets firing blindly into the night. Human soldiers pinned down, outnumbered, outgunned. It was a massacre, until the Titans hit the ground. Sentinel slammed down like a meteor, landing on a squad of enemy soldiers and sending bodies flying. Forge crashed through the roof of one of the shield generators, roaring like a beast, her weapons swinging in brutal arcs. Grim touched down near a group of pinned human defenders and opened up with his massive twin gun, mowing down the enemy like wheat before a thresher. Ravager landed last, rolling to absorb the impact, coming up with a grin on his scarred face and a plasma cannon bigger than Zara strapped to his back. And Zara hit hard, the grav pack nearly snapping her spine, but she rolled, came up, firing, teeth bared in a snarl. The battlefield was chaos. Enemy forces turned in panic, screaming orders in their clicking insectile language. Plasma bolts flashed everywhere. Explosions ripped the air apart. But the Titans moved like avatars of destruction. Forge charged into a tower's base, smashing supports with her weapon, bringing the whole structure down onto a squad of invaders. Grim knelt beside a human platoon, providing brutal cover fire as they scrambled for safer ground. Sentinel waded through the enemy like a reaper through a cornfield, every punch sending bodies flying, every step shaking the lunar soil. Zara fought, too, smaller, faster, darting between wreckage, taking out enemy officers, calling positions to the Titans over the comms. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was part of the fight. Above them, one of the array's main towers shuddered under a fresh wave of enemy bombardment. Its energy shield flickered dangerously. Zara's comm crackled. "This is Shield Command. Critical damage. Repeat, critical damage. If that tower falls, the array is going offline." Sentinel growled low over the team channel. "On it," he pointed to Zara. "With me. Now." Without thinking, she ran after him, heart in her throat. They charged up the broken slope of the tower's outer defenses, enemy fire hammering around them. Grim and Ravager covered them, raining destruction from behind. Forge broke off, charging toward an enemy artillery position that was chewing up the remaining defenses. Zara skidded behind Sentinel, following his massive frame as he smashed through the tower's front gates with his bare hands. Inside, it was worse. Enemy troops crawling over the control nodes like termites, tearing apart the shield systems. Sentinel didn't hesitate. He roared, a sound so deep it made Zara's bones vibrate, and tore into them. Zara backed him up, shooting anything that moved, dropping grenades into clusters of enemy engineers, holding the stairwells. Her rifle overheated twice, but she kept moving, kept fighting. They fought their way to the tower's core. And there, standing over the shield generator, was something different. A tall alien commander, wrapped in black armor, holding a weapon Zara had never seen before, a twisted, jagged staff pulsing with dark energy. The alien turned, eyes glowing with hate. Sentinel let out a low snarl. "You," he growled. "You're the one behind this." The alien commander smiled, a horrible, knowing smile, and raised the staff. The real fight was just beginning. The alien commander moved first, faster than anything. That size should have been able to move. The dark staff slashed through the air, sending a shock wave of energy screaming toward them. Sentinel shoved Zara aside without hesitation, planting himself directly in the path of the attack. The blast hit him square in the chest, knocking him back a step, but only a step. He straightened slowly, steam rising from his battered armor, and he smiled. It was the kind of smile that promised someone was about to die. Zara scrambled to her feet, heart pounding so hard she could barely think. Her rifle was fried from overuse, useless now. But she drew her sidearm, hands steady through, sheer force of will. She knew she couldn't take that alien in a straight fight, but she wasn't going to stand there doing nothing. Sentinel rolled his massive shoulders, letting out a low, rumbling growl that filled the ruined tower chamber. The alien hissed something, in its harsh tongue, the staff flaring with pulsing black light. Then Sentinel charged. It was like watching a mountain come alive. He hit the alien with a shoulder smash that cracked the floor beneath their feet. The staff clanged to the side as Sentinel grabbed the commander and hurled him through a reinforced console like it was cardboard. Zara moved, firing shot after shot into enemy troops still clustered around the generator. They were trying to overload it, trying to bring the whole shield down manually now that their leader was busy. "Cover the core!" Sentinel barked over the comms, not looking away from the commander struggling to rise. Zara threw herself into it, diving behind the generator, using every dirty trick she knew, kicking out knees, firing point blank, smashing skulls with the butt of her pistol. Sentinel and the commander clashed again, brutal and ugly. The alien staff lashed out, scoring deep gouges in Sentinel's armor, but he answered with his fists, massive, unstoppable. He fought like he didn't care about pain anymore, like he had made peace with it a long time ago. The whole tower shook, with the force of their battle. Outside, Zara could hear Forge over the comms, shouting in triumph as she destroyed the artillery positions. Grimm's voice was calm and cold, reporting kill counts as he laid down suppressive fire. Ravager's laughter echoed like a wild thing. They were winning. They just had to survive a little longer. The alien commander twisted, pulling something small and sharp from its belt, a grenade shaped like a jagged crystal. It flashed blood red in its hand. Zara's heart stopped. He was going to blow the core. Without thinking, she sprinted forward, past burning wreckage and pools of blood, shouting at the top of her lungs, "Sentinel! Grenade!" Sentinel didn't hesitate. In one brutal motion, he grabbed the alien by the throat, lifted him clean off the ground, and threw him straight up into the air. The alien detonated mid-flight, a brilliant crimson flare lighting the shattered tower. Shards of black armor rained down like ash, but the blast rocked the whole structure. Cracks spiderwebbed across the shield generator. Systems screamed alarms in a dozen languages. It wasn't enough to destroy it, but it had wounded it badly. Zara skidded to the generator, heart racing, slamming into the control panels, trying to override the meltdown sequence. Come on," she muttered, fingers flying across the keys. Sentinel stomped over, his armor smoking, blood dripping from a dozen shallow cuts. "Can you stop it?" he growled. Zara shook her head grimly. "Not for long. Maybe 5 minutes. Maybe less." Sentinel didn't even blink. "That's enough," he said. He turned back toward the shattered doorway, where the remaining enemy forces were regrouping outside. Reinforcements, no doubt called by the explosion. He looked at Zara. "You stay with the core. You keep it alive." His voice was pure iron. "We'll hold them." Zara wanted to argue, wanted to say it was suicide, but the look in Sentinel's eyes, the sheer immovable will, silenced her. She nodded once. "I'll hold." Sentinel gave a sharp, satisfied nod. Then he keyed the team communication. "All Titans rally on me, last stand." Forge's voice cracked over the channel, fierce and exultant. "Hell yes!" Grimm's cold flat. "Affirmative!" Ravager's wild cackle. "Time to break some bones!" Zara turned back to the console, fingers flying again, trying to patch the worst of the damage. Behind her, she heard the Titans moving into position. Heavy steps, weapons priming, low mutters of promises made and blood debts owed. And when the enemy stormed the tower again, they found not a broken, desperate handful of survivors. They found the monsters of Earth's past standing tall, defiant, unbreakable, ready to buy humanity's future with blood if necessary. The first wave of enemies hit like a hammer. Zara barely looked up from the generator console. She had her orders, and she would follow them. But the sounds around her were impossible to ignore. The ground shook with every step Sentinel took. Plasma fire crackled. Explosions thudded against the reinforced walls, and the Titans roared back with brutal, bone-shaking violence. Forge led the charge, her weapons spinning in savage arcs, every blow flattening squads of enemy soldiers as if they were nothing. Grimm fired in short, deafening bursts, cutting through armor and flesh with ruthless efficiency. Ravager barreled through the enemy ranks, laughing like a lunatic, swinging a massive blade torn from a wrecked alien walker. And Sentinel fought, like death itself. The enemy had numbers, speed, technology, but the Titans had rage, will, purpose. They were humanity's answer to a galaxy that thought it could exterminate them without consequence. Sentinel moved like a force of nature, each blow crushing enemy soldiers, each step shaking the lunar surface. His armor was blackened and torn, but he fought with the power of someone who had been waiting for this moment for decades, perhaps centuries. "Core status?" he bellowed over the din of battle. Zara's fingers flew across the console. 60% and dropping, she shouted back. 3 minutes at best. A new wave of enemy troops poured through the breach, these ones different, sleeker, faster, with weapons that glowed with an eerie blue light, elite commandos, designed specifically to counter heavy resistance. Forge saw them first. "Hunters!" She roared in warning, bracing herself against the onslaught. The hunters moved with terrifying precision, targeting weak points in the Titan's armor with synchronized fire. One bolt caught Ravager in the shoulder joint, punching through his defenses. He staggered but didn't fall, roaring in pain and fury as he ripped a chunk of wall free and hurled it like a missile, crushing 3 of them at once. "Keep them off me!" Zara shouted, frantically rerouting power through the damaged shield generator. "Almost there!" Grim understood immediately. He positioned himself between Zara and the breach, his massive weapon a constant stream of destruction. "You heard her!" he growled to the others. "Nothing gets through!" The hunters changed tactics, splitting up, trying to flank the Titans. 2 of them managed to get behind Forge, aiming for her exposed back. But Sentinel was there in an instant, grabbing both by their throats and smashing them together with a sickening crunch. 40%, Zara called out, sweat dripping from her brow. "I need more time." Outside, another explosion rocked the tower. Through the shattered windows, Zara could see enemy reinforcements landing, hundreds more with heavy artillery. The lunar sky was filled with their ships, black against the stars, blocking out Earth's blue glow. "We don't have more time," Sentinel said grimly. He turned to Forge. "Get the core stabilized. Whatever it takes." Forge nodded, understanding immediately. She stomped to the generator, placing her massive hands directly on the damaged components. "Move," she told Zara, her voice surprisingly gentle. Zara stepped aside, and Forge ripped. Open an access panel, exposing the glowing heart of the shield generator. Without hesitation, she reached in, ignoring the energy burning her hands, and physically forced the components back into alignment. "What are you doing?" Zara gasped, horrified and amazed. "Old Titan trick," Forge grunted, pain evident in her voice despite her smile. "Sometimes you gotta bleed to make things work." The shields began to stabilize, power levels climbing back toward operational levels. But Forge was paying the price, the energy scorching her arms, burning through her armor. Sentinel nodded grimly, satisfied. Then he turned to the breach, where the next wave was already visible, a dark tide ready to swallow them whole. "Zara," he said, voice like gravel, "you've got your orders. When the shields are back up, you signal Earth. Tell them we held the line." Zara's throat tightened. "What about you?" Sentinel exchanged looks with Grim and Ravager. Something unspoken passed between them, old soldiers who knew exactly what came next. "We'll buy you time," Sentinel said simply. Before Zara could protest, the Titans moved as one. Forge left the generator, her work done but her hands blackened and smoking. She rejoined her comrades without complaint. Grim reloaded his massive weapon with his last magazine. Ravager twirled his improvised blade, a feral grin splitting his scarred face. "You know," Ravager said conversationally, as if they weren't, about to face overwhelming odds. "I always wondered if they kept us around for a reason. Turns out they did." Grim nodded solemnly. "One last fight." Forge laughed, the sound rich despite her pain. "Make it count." Sentinel looked back at Zara one final time. "When this is over, remember us, not as weapons, as the last Titans." Then they charged out to meet the enemy, not retreating, not defending, but attacking. 4 against an army. It should have been hopeless, insane, suicidal. But they were Titans. Zara watched them go, heart hammering in her chest. Then she turned back to the console, fingers moving with renewed purpose. The shields climbed past 60%, past 70%, stabilizing. Outside, she could hear the battle, the dull thunder of Forge's hammer, the staccato roar of Grim's weapon, Ravager's wild battle cries, and Sentinel's deep, commanding voice, calling out targets. The comm system crackled to life. "Lunar Array, this is Earth Command. What's your status?" Zara swallowed hard, eyes fixed on the battle raging outside. "Shields stabilizing," she reported. "Array will hold." "Reinforcements. Inbound," the voice promised. "ETA 15 minutes. But Zara knew the Titans wouldn't last 15 minutes. Not against those odds. They weren't fighting to survive, they were fighting to buy time, and they were winning. Somehow, impossibly, they were holding back the tide. Ravager fell first. A concentrated barrage caught him mid-charge, blasting through his chest armor. But even as he fell, he took a dozen enemies with him, his massive blade spinning through their ranks like a cyclone. Grim was next, dropping to one knee as his weapon finally overheated. He used it as a club after that, swinging it like a battering. Ram until they finally overwhelmed him. It took 20 of them to bring him down. Forge held longer, her hammer creating shockwaves that rippled through the enemy forces. But eventually, even her strength began to fail. An elite hunter managed to land a precision shot at her knee joint. She stumbled, and they swarmed her like insects. But Forge didn't die quietly. She triggered an energy overload in her hammer, taking half the attacking force with her in a blinding flash. And Sentinel fought alone after that. One Titan against an army, buying seconds with blood, purchasing moments with pain. He fought without hope of survival, only with the certainty that every enemy he killed was one that wouldn't reach the shield generator, wouldn't reach Earth. The shields hit 90%. Zara's hands were shaking now, tears streaming down her face as she watched the last Titan standing. "It's holding," she said into the comm. "The array is holding." "Good work," Command replied, completely unaware of the sacrifice being made. "Keep it that way until reinforcements arrive." Sentinel was surrounded now, bleeding from a dozen serious wounds, his armor in tatters. But he still stood, fists clenched, back straight, defiant to the end. Zara couldn't watch anymore. She turned back to the console, focusing on maintaining the shields, honoring their sacrifice the only way she could. Behind her, she heard Sentinel's final roar, not of pain or defeat, but of triumph. Then silence. The minutes crawled by like hours. The shield strength held at 95%. Outside, the enemy forces regrouped, preparing for another assault on the tower. Then new sounds filled the air, the distinctive roar of Earth's defense fleet arriving in force. Dropships, fighters, cruisers, the cavalry had finally arrived. Zara staggered to the shattered window, looking out at the battlefield. The enemy was in retreat, their ships burning as Earth's forces cut through them with righteous fury. And there, amid the destruction and debris, lay the Titans. Still, silent, their fight finished. Zara's comm crackled one last time. "Shield array secure," Command announced. "All units report. The enemy is in full retreat." Zara closed her eyes, exhaustion and grief washing over her. "Lieutenant Voss reporting," she said softly. "Tower secured." She hesitated, then added, "The Titans held the line." There was a long pause. "Repeat that, Lieutenant. Did you say Titans?" Zara looked at the battlefield again, at the four massive figures who had given everything. They weren't myths or weapons or monsters. They were soldiers. Heroes. "Yes," she said firmly. "The Titans. They saved us all." She straightened her back, standing tall like Sentinel had. "And this time, we're not going to forget them." 3 days later, Zara stood on the lunar surface outside the repaired shield tower. Earth glowed blue and serene in the black sky above, temporarily safe from the enemy that had retreated to lick its wounds. Admiral Reed stood beside her, looking older than ever as they gazed at the memorial that had been hastily constructed. 4 massive armor pieces, a hammer, a twin-barreled gun, a blade, and a helmet, arranged in a circle around a simple plaque. "Will there be more Titans?" Zara asked quietly. Reed's cybernetic eye flickered. "There are others," he admitted. "Not many, hidden, scattered, but they'll come now." He looked at her sharply. "And they'll need someone to fight beside them, someone who remembers they're more than weapons." Zara nodded slowly, understanding what he was asking. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. and humanity would need every advantage, every hero, every titan they could find. "When do we start?" she asked. Reed's mouth twitched in a ghost of a smile. "Now," he said. "We start now." They walked back toward the waiting shuttle, leaving the memorial behind. But Zara knew she would carry the memory of the Titans with her forever, their courage, their sacrifice, their humanity. And somewhere out, in the stars, the enemy was about to learn that humanity wasn't beaten yet. Not even close, because when you come for humanity's children, humanity sends its monsters after you, and the monsters were coming.